I'm Sherry and welcome back to my channel, Sherry Jones Designs. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made a mannequin head. I first started by making patterns on paper and experimenting. It took me a couple of tries to get the seams all the way I wanted them. And so this pattern here, I finally decided I think it's good enough. And I've traced it onto a little bit heavier paper and I'm cutting it out. Now, when you go to put this on your fabric, you're going to want to make sure your fabric is right sides together. And then you're going to cut 2 of each. This pattern will be available either on the Discord or through a link below, and you can print it out on your printer and put it together. It is an extra large, like a men's head or an extra large. So just remember, you can size it down like a 1/4 inch at a time. Every time you size it down, and shrink the seam, take that times 8 because there's 8 seams in the head. So a 1/4 inch would go a long ways. That would be 2 inches smaller. So you don't want to do big chunks sizing it down, just a little bit at a time. Now that I've got my fabrics, I put my fabric right sides together and I traced my pattern. I'm cutting it out. And there was enough room just barely for the back gusset. So now I'm tracing the gusset onto my fabric, and I've again got right sides together. Thankfully, there was enough fabric for this. I thought for a minute I wasn't going to have enough, but thankfully I did. And I chose this fabric. I was going to use muslin. I think muslin would be an excellent choice for this pattern. Also, if you want to use it as a decorative item, you could use like a really pretty floral or something of that nature. Alrighty, so now I've got my pieces cut out, and now we're going to go to the sewing machine. This is the front of the head, the face. I'm going to sew down the front of the face. If you have a fabric that shifts, you will want to pin it. So I'm just using a straight stitch here, and I'm stitching all the way down the front of the face. And then after that, you'll stitch the back of the head, and the pattern does state on it which is the face and which is the back of the head, so you won't get confused. I did notice that this pattern, the face, is more rounded. If it's more rounded than you prefer, you can always alter this. You can always sew in differently on the face side of the pattern to create a different head shape. Now I'm doing what's called easing. I am cutting towards my seam, but not through it, so that when I turn this inside out, I can stuff it and get a nice clean line all the way down. You want to be very careful not to cut through your stitching. You know that this is the back of the head, right there, that rounded portion. So I'm going to flip it over, and now I'm going to sew down the back of the head. Same thing, I'm back stitching because I don't want that to come undone with pressure, like when I'm stuffing it. And I'm just going to stitch all the way down, and I'm just running my sewing machine foot along the outside edge. So it's about a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more of a seam allowance that I'm using with this pattern. I think if I had gone probably another 1/4 inch maybe, it might have been more like a woman's size head. The neck has to be extra long because we're going to be putting a base on the bottom of this to give it some weight. And we need to be able to fold the fabric underneath that base to have it to be able to stand. And once again, I'm easing the fabric again, making sure I don't cut through my stitching. It's not hard to make. The hard part was creating the pattern and getting the pieces to line up properly. So now I'm going to be facing these right sides together, and I'm going to match the top seam. We want to match that first, and you want to sew from the top down, because if there's any stretch in your fabric and you were to start at the neck, your top seam is not going to meet in the top of the head, and it will give you problems. So just clip it, pin it, whatever. I did both versions of pinning and clipping, and they both work fine. So that is up to you. You can either clip it together or pin it all the way down, and take your time to match it very carefully so that your head doesn't end up you don't have to end up taking it all out. Having the heavier fabric made this a little bit easier. You definitely do not want to use a knit fabric. I think a knit fabric would be very frustrating to use when you try to stuff it really tight anywhere. You would have more control over that, like if you did want to make certain areas bulge. So if you were using this pattern to create, let's say, some sort of mannequin thing, or like I've seen people use like buttons and hosiery and stuff and create realistic looking faces. So if you did something like that where you were going to stitch it in and pull it in to create features in the face, then you probably could use a knit, or you would definitely have to use some kind of knit for that. And that is a really cool art form. I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but it's really a neat art form. Now I'm going to start up at the top of my stitching, up there where I'm going to start at the very top of the head, and I'm just going to sew down each side. Again, I'm using a straight stitch, and I'm just going to be very careful and make sure that I follow the edge all the way down. And what I'm following is the line I drew. If I didn't cut an area out perfect, and I saw that my line was actually to the inside, I followed the foot on the line that I drew. This allowed me to actually have a better looking and better shape when I was finished, because I did actually not have it cut correct in a couple of spots. The good thing about cutting them both sides out together at the same time with the fabric folded is they do match pretty well when you go to sew them together for the front of the face and the back of the head. And then I go right back up, start at the top again, and come down the other side. That way, any stretching of the fabric or anything like that is going to be able to be dealt with on the way down and not show up at the top dead center of the head, creating wrinkles, because that's what will happen. You'll have puckers up there where you try to hide your extra fabric if you have extra at the end. And if you do come out a little short or long on the bottom, you can always trim it flat at this point. If the head itself is okay, and perhaps you cut one a little bit longer, you can always just trim them off. I did end up cutting some off because this was so thick, this sort of tweed wool mix, that it wanted to, it didn't want to lay flat when I tried to put the base or the bottom of the head on. Now here I've broken a thread, but it's not my machine's fault. What it is, this serger thread I use has knots in it, and sometimes they just catch in the needle eye and it will just break your thread. So I've had to rethread my machine. I've trimmed my strings, and now I'm beginning to ease the fabric again, cutting small slits, careful not to go through my seam. And then we'll turn it inside out and begin stuffing it. And it wasn't hard, thankfully there's plenty of room to turn it inside out. A lot of times if you're doing projects with plush animals or things like that, I used to do a lot of these, when the crafts were a really big deal and everything, like door stops, it was a rabbit, and I used to make great big vacuum cleaner covers that were like rabbits with long ears. It reminded me of that, of making them. But thankfully the hole is big enough I can just get my arm in there really nice. And so now I'm going to begin to stuff it. And the only thing I didn't really care for, I felt like the face was a little bit more rounded than it should be. But there's people of all kinds of shapes. And I honestly wouldn't have cared if it was just a shape of a light bulb. I just need something that I'm going to be able to put things on, like headscarves and things like that I'm going to make for my shop. I wanted to be able to display it. And I thought, actually, if it's kind of wonky, it actually would have more character and probably go with my shop. And I kind of like the idea that this was going to be an upcycled head mannequin. Kind of goes with the theme of my shop. My son said it looked like an alien when I was done and wanted me to put alien eyes on it. And I told him I didn't want to scare away the shoppers. We were just trying to sell stuff. He was very funny. And he had a good point. It did kind of look like an alien when I was finished. It wouldn't take much to make it look total alien. But it definitely, by just changing the shape of the front of the pattern, maybe making a little bit straighter down, you could change it up completely into different face shapes, which could be kind of fun because you could use it in other projects as well. It took way more stuffing than I thought it would use. I'm using fiber fill from an old pillow, so even the fiber fill is upcycled. I had this great big old like cushion pillow I'd found a long time ago, and I just never used it, and I thought, you know, we might as well use it. So I took the fiber fill out of it, and yeah, the head actually started turning out good. I need to stuff his cheeks a little more, but it is definitely like an extra large, I would say, more like a men's head. And that also made it a challenge to create the base big enough or heavy enough for, because it was kind of large. What I ended up doing was using like rocks, but cement might have been heavier. I don't know. I may end up having to pin it to something or create like a wood base that's heavier for him, especially if I'm trying to sell it. Especially if I'm trying to sell like a hat or something that would have weight to it, might just tip it over. So I'm kind of wondering if I shouldn't have more weight in the bottom of it. I guess I could always take it apart and add that if I need to. I just kept stuffing and stuffing, thinking, when is this thing going to be full? And that my seam in the front did start to kind of pull, but I think that's where I was having trouble with the thread when it broke. Almost kind of looks like it has a tiny face in the front there, but it's a little bit rounded, but I think it's not too bad of a mannequin shape, really. I was happy with it, so I just moved on to the next phase of trying to create the actual base that would hold it up. I thought about putting eyes in it, but then that would crinkle it, so I was like, no, never mind. We don't need an actual face. We just need something to set hats and things like that on, and headscarves and things that I want to make. So the base, I decided to use this old cottage cheese container and cut it to whatever size I would like, the height that I felt that I needed. Some of the videos I watched, they used like your tape roll, you know, like your big tape, packaging tape comes in, the hard roll or something like that, something round. But I decided I wanted something I could put, I'm going to put rocks in here. Now for weight, you could use rice, you could use beans. You know, when we used to do the crafts, you would use, you know, you put it in like a little mesh bag or something like that, and you'd put it in the bottom. What you could do is use rocks or something heavy like that, and then just pour some Elmer's glue in the bottom of your plastic container like I have there, and let it dry. For me, I decided I didn't really care if the rocks moved a little bit. Cut the container down, and what I decided to do was to put some rocks in the bottom and some fabric on top so the rocks wouldn't fall out, and let the fiber fill put pressure on the fabric, and it should all just stay in place. I checked to see if it would fit, and it fit in there just fine. So you should be able to go get any, like the medium-sized cottage cheese or medium-sized type sour cream containers that you at your store. They should work just fine in there. So that way you don't have to go get something special just for it. You want it to fit really tight because you don't want the head to droop down or to fall backwards. And you want to leave yourself plenty of room to glue it to that base. And we're just going to be using hot glue. And with the pattern, there's plenty of room, even for a taller neck, if you want a taller neck than the one that I decided to do. I stuffed it in there really, really tight. You can kind of see the edge of it, but the further you get it up there, the more it disappears. And so I just kept stuffing it in there as hard as I could, and then I glued it in place. Once I got it glued in place, I traced the bottom of it out onto this other piece of felt that I had. And I cut it out and I glued it on the bottom to create a nice finished edge. But it still acted like it didn't want to really stand as well as I would have liked it to. So like I said, I may be pinning it down to, or hooking it to something a little bit like, you know, I'm gonna have to hook it to something else to make it stand without falling over if I put a hat on it. I could tell it kind of wanted to still tip on me. But I'm happy with it. I think I can use it. If that's something that you think you would get some good out of, you know, I'm glad to share it with everyone. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video. Until next time, happy sewing.